In the news tonight, a new chair and members of the Independent Election Commission are sworn in before His Majesty, who reiterates its independence and its role in enhancing democracy and citizens' confidence in public institutions. Ministers of Syria's neighbors and the UNHCR Commissioner meet in Jordan to discuss cooperation over the crisis, and Foreign Minister Nasser Judeh presents them with staggering data on the impact of the influx on Jordan. And Afghan officials give up hope of finding any survivors from a landslide in the remote northeast, with 2,700 feared dead and 4,000 evacuated from their homes. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. A new chair and members of the Independent Election Commission (IEC) were sworn in today before His Majesty the King. In a meeting with a new commission following the ceremony, His Majesty said the IEC has advanced parliamentary elections through its involvement in the preparation, administration and supervision of the process in what has enhanced democratic reforms in Jordan. His Majesty said the new commission members and chair must build on past achievements and continue to upgrade the tasks ahead in coordination with all stakeholders and in accordance with best international practices and the highest standards of integrity and impartiality. King Abdullah reiterated the full independence of the Commission and its important role in meeting the goals of development and increasing citizens' confidence in public institutions. The Commission is now headed by Riyad al-Shak'a with the membership of Asma Khadir, Muhammad Masalha, Samar al-Haj Hassan and Ali Lahrut. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour met with representatives of Bani Hassan tribe to brief them on developments relating to the kidnapping of Jordan's ambassador to Libya, Fawaz al-Aitan. Mansour said the government is exerting unwavering efforts to ensure Aitan's safe release and return home. Mansour is also in personal contact with Aitan's family members. Separately, the Prime Minister met with ministers from Syria's neighboring countries, convening a meeting in Jordan to discuss the Syria crisis and its impact on communities hosting a growing influx of refugees. In Sur, welcomed Turkish Foreign Minister Ahmed Davutoglu, Iraq's Hoshyar Zebari, Egyptian Deputy Foreign Minister Hamdi Loza, Lebanese Minister of Social Development Rashid Derbas, and UN High Commissioner for Refugees Antonio Guterres, as well as Foreign and Expatriate Affairs Minister Nasser Judeh. He said Syrians in Jordan now account for about 20% of the population, creating considerable strains on the kingdom's infrastructure and resources, as well as education, health and other services. On the ongoing crisis, Mansour said Jordan has advocated a political solution in Syria that includes all its people in order to stop the bloodshed and ensure the return of refugees to their country. The ministers chose Zaatri camp for the venue of their meeting to deliberate ways to channel international support to ease the pressure on Syria's neighbors. Here's more.
The meeting is the third for countries hosting the largest number of Syrian refugees, bringing together foreign ministers from Lebanon, Egypt, Turkey and Iraq, as well as Jordan, along with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR. Challenges and hardships facing host countries in the region is the focus of the minister, in hopes to draw the world's attention to the enormity of the situation. Foreign and Expatriate Affairs Minister Nasser Judeh appealed to donor nations to assume their responsibility towards Jordan as it carries out a key humanitarian role towards Syrian refugees on behalf of the international community.
The childbirths in this camp alone, ladies and gentlemen, stands at 3,358 children since the opening of Zaatri 22 months ago. This would constitute, by any stretch of the imagination and by all standards, and in some countries, an influx in itself. Jordan fully appreciates the partnership that we have forged with UNHCR and the support that Jordan has received from so many countries around the world, donor countries, international organizations, in helping us deal with this crisis. A lot more is needed. I want to mention here the two donor conferences that were hosted by Kuwait, which were extremely useful and productive, but I think we need to operationalize the human conscience through the good offices of my friend, the High Commissioner for Refugees, in order to deal with this crisis as it continues. We call on the international community to step up to the challenge, to be more active and forthcoming in burden sharing, and we remind that this crisis has reached levels in which lip service and fig leaves are beyond being unhelpful, but are counterproductive and have become a distraction from the real issues, such as the reality that you saw just outside this room.
Jordan, along with Lebanon, Turkey and Iraq, has been inundated with refugees fleeing the ongoing civil war. According to the United Nations, Jordan is host to at least 600,000 registered Syrian refugees, almost a quarter of over 2.5 million in the region. Jordanian government officials, however, estimate there are over 1,250,000 Syrians in the kingdom. Zaatari camp is nearing full capacity, with over 100,000 refugees now settled there, and a new camp has just been inaugurated in Azraq, set up to accommodate up to 130,000, making it the biggest refugee camp in the region. The UN's High Commissioner for Refugees, Antonio Guterres, affirmed the dire need for increased international support to the host communities.
There has been very little support, and there must be massive support from the international community, financial support.
Turkish Foreign Minister Ahmet Davutoglu focused on the internally displaced and those in the midst of the conflict, saying it's important to ensure they have access to humanitarian aid in accordance with the UN Security Council resolutions.
All the neighboring countries, we requested this resolution, unhindered humanitarian access in Syria. But unfortunately, this resolution is very positive development, as Mr. Guterres mentioned, but unfortunately, the implementation was not promising as we expected. As I said, only 78 trucks were allowed to go inside Syria.
The ministers agreed on the need to maintain close cooperation between Syria's neighbors and the UNHCR. The UN recently launched its biggest appeal ever, calling for $6.5 billion in aid for Syria and the region, but according to officials at the camp, only around 24% of the promised funding has reached the countries and aid agencies. Luay Balkar for the news at 10.
The Syrian Supreme Constitutional Court announced the names of the final 3 candidates for the Syrian presidential elections. Maher Hajjar, Hassan al-Nouri and Bashar al-Assad will compete in the June 3rd elections. 24 applicants presented their papers to run for the presidential elections, and each of Syria's parliament members voted for 1 candidate, which narrowed down the number to 3. The Syrian constitution states that presidential candidates must win the backing of 35 members of parliament. Spokesman of the Syrian Supreme Constitutional Court said those who were not accepted by the court can file a petition within 3 days. It is not yet known how a vote will be held in a country where 6 million people have been displaced and large swathes of territory remain outside government control. Meanwhile, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad said government agencies should increase cooperation on aid work, but must do so without compromising national sovereignty. Speaking during a meeting on humanitarian relief for people affected by terrorism in Syria, Assad said aid work is a top priority for the government. He blamed terrorists for inflicting suffering on civilians. Al-Assad stressed the importance of delivering aid without delay and continuing field work with all concerned bodies domestically and abroad to ease relief operations. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon last month said none of the warring parties in Syria has met UN demands for aid access and demanded the Security Council take action on violations of international law. A Jewish seminary is being set up in East Jerusalem in a bustling commercial area in the same building as a post office serving thousands of Palestinians every day. The seminary, which includes sleeping quarters and could house as many as 300 Israelis, is the first Jewish housing venture in the main shopping passage on Salah ad-Din Street across from the Old City. Palestinian and Israeli critics alike worry that the placement of the academy in such a central location is asking for trouble in East Jerusalem. The seminary quietly opened its doors a few weeks ago, but there are reports of a formal ceremony later this month. The private organization behind the project, Ateret Kohanim, refuses to discuss its acquisitions, citing the issue's sensitivity, but settlement watchdog groups say an Israeli company that occupied the property put it up for sale.
What Israel has done in coordination with the custodian for absentee property, who considers the properties which are related to the Jordanian government as absentee properties, they rented or sold the upper part of the building. This is a step to take over the building. Most of the lower part is controlled by the Israeli police and border police, and what is left is the part where the post office is located. In Israel, the post now is being moved to local companies to take care of it. So we fear that they will evacuate the building to make it a religious school for the extremists.
Libyan businessman Ahmed Ma'atiq was sworn in as the country's new prime minister 3 weeks after Abdullah Thani resigned. After a chaotic session of parliament, Ma'atiq was initially reported to have mustered only 113 of the 120 votes needed under the constitution in a vote of confidence. But the second deputy speaker of parliament said Ma'atiq had in fact clinched 121 votes, beating off challenger Omar al-Hasi, a university professor. However, some lawmakers immediately challenged this, saying Ma'atiq had failed to win the necessary quorum in an earlier vote. Ma'atiq has been given 2 weeks to form a new government. Russia said that the Kiev government needs help to establish a dialogue with pro-Russian activists in southeastern Ukraine, and that steps would soon be taken in that direction. Russia's deputy foreign minister said a Ukrainian operation aimed at retaking rebel-held territory is in breach of an agreement signed in Geneva last month to defuse the crisis. But Ukraine is accusing Russia of engineering clashes and blaming it for the unrest that is spreading in the country. Here's more.
Gunshots in the eastern Ukrainian city of Slavyansk on Sunday. Armed pro-Russian separatists control the center of town, and government forces have taken positions at checkpoints around the city.
We're traveling from Kharkiv. There is shooting going on, so we are waiting here.
Slavyansk is a rebel stronghold. It's not just government troops they're prepared to fight. It's also the ultra-radical opposition group called the Right Sector.
I know a lot of people here are looking forward to seeing those, how do you call them? The Right Sector. Let them come to us.
The crisis in Ukraine has spread beyond the restive east. Overnight, this bank headquarters was set ablaze in the southeastern city of Mariupol. And in the southern city of Odessa, residents mourn the dead after Friday clashes left more than 40 dead. Ukrainian Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk came to Odessa on Sunday and accused Russia of engineering the riots that killed so many here.
Destruction of the country and splitting the country, this is the Russian plan. Odessa was holding on for 2 months until the Russians sent here more people to heat up the situation. Odessa is far too valuable for Russia, but it is even more valuable for us because it's our Odessa, our country, and our people.
But calm didn't return to Odessa on Sunday. Hundreds of pro-Russian activists attacked the police station and demanded the release of their comrades detained in Friday's riots. Some 30 of them were released, and questions are now being raised about the army's ability, as well as the police, to confront the uprising in their country.
The United Nations today put the death toll from Friday's massive landslide in the remote Afghan province of Badakhshan province at up to 500, while local officials say the number killed could be as high as 2,700. It is unlikely the final figure will ever be known, as officials say it is impossible to retrieve the bodies buried in up to 50 meters of mud and debris. A local official says rescue operations ongoing since Friday cannot continue anymore, as the houses are under meters of mud from the massive mountain that caved in. Officials are focusing their attention on some 4,000 people evacuated and may never return to their homes amid fears of another landslide. U.S. President Barack Obama poked fun at himself in what he called a hard year at the White House Correspondents Association dinner. The dinner drew thousands of guests, including journalists, politicians, and Hollywood stars, to celebrate a year of journalism. Obama highlighted some of the low points of his administration last year, turned on conservative opponents and also took a swipe at Republicans. And as he is known for his comic timing and delivery, Obama didn't disappoint.
The White House Correspondents' Dinner draws journalists, politicians, Hollywood stars and business executives. Centre stage was President Barack Obama's speech. He got in quick with a joke on himself over the disastrous website rollout for his health insurance reform legislation.
Of course, we rolled out healthcare.gov. That could have gone better. In 2008, my slogan was, yes, we can. In 2013, my slogan was, Control, Alt, Delete.
He took a swipe at conservative opponents for praising Russian President Vladimir Putin.
You would think they'd appreciate a more assertive approach, considering that the new conservative darling is none other than Vladimir Putin. Last year, Pat Buchanan said, Putin's headed straight for the Nobel Peace Prize. He said this. Now, I know it sounds crazy, but to be fair, they give those to just about anybody these days.
It wasn't all smooth running, as Obama's video message marking the 100th year of the White House Correspondents Association showed. More than 2,000 people packed the ballroom of the Washington Hilton for this year's event.
We begin with a Grand Prix in Jerez, Spain that saw MotoGP world champion Marc Marquez streak away to win first place and make it 4 wins in 4 races this year. In cycling, Britain's Adam Yates won the Tour of Turkey on the 121-kilometer route around Istanbul. 21-year-old Yates finished 5 seconds ahead of Estonian Rein Taaramäe to seal his first professional stage race victory. France's Romain Hardy took 3rd place. Yates' compatriot Mark Cavendish outsprinted Elia Viviani and Andrea Guardini in the closing 200 meters to take his 4th stage of the 88-day race. And finally, for a quick look at the weather forecast. Hot weather is expected tomorrow in most parts of the country as temperatures soar to the mid-30s. Winds will be southeasterly moderate, changing to brisk and blowing dust in the desert areas. The Gulf of Aqaba can expect a high of 40 degrees Celsius, while winds will be southerly moderate and the seas slightly high. And now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. A new chair and members of the Independent Election Commission are sworn in before His Majesty, who reiterates its independence and its role in enhancing democracy and citizens' confidence in public institutions. Ministers of Syria's neighbors and the UNHCR Commissioner meet in Jordan to discuss cooperation over the crisis, and Foreign Minister Nasser Joudi presents them with staggering data on the impact of the influx on Jordan. And Afghan officials give up hope of finding any survivors from a landslide in the remote northeast, with 2,700 feared dead and 4,000 evacuated from their homes. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Ayat Khan. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.